The summons. The holographic seal materialized above New Geneva's skyline at precisely 0800 hours, a crystalline emblem of the galactic sovereignty spinning silently against Earth's blue sky. Within moments, every screen, every device, every reflective surface on the planet displayed the same message in flawless translation. By decree of the Sovereign Council, the species designated as Homo sapiens is hereby summoned to stand trial for crimes against galactic order. A representative shall present themselves within 7 planetary rotations aboard the adjudication vessel Eternal Verdict. Failure to comply will result in immediate planetary quarantine and species reclassification to presentient status. Ambassador Kira Vashin stood in the emergency session of Earth's Unified Council, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her expression. 20 years she'd spent in diplomatic service, but nothing had prepared her for this. What crimes? Demanded Chancellor Matteo Reeves, his dark eyes scanning the legal documentation that had accompanied the summons. We've barely been in contact with them for 3 years. Kira studied the holographic text floating before her. The galactic sovereignty had uplifted 17 species before humanity, bringing them into a vast interstellar civilization governed by strict laws she was only beginning to understand. Earth had been granted provisional membership, a probationary status that now seemed terrifyingly fragile. The charges are extensive, she said quietly. Unauthorized technological development. Violation of the progression protocols. Deployment of quantum disruption weaponry. And she paused, her throat tightening, excessive individualism deemed dangerous to collective harmony. That last one isn't even a real crime, protested Minister Yuki Tanaka, her hands gripping the table's edge. They're prosecuting us for being human? Kira's assistant, a young analyst named David Okafor, pulled up historical records. Actually, Minister, it is. The conformity statutes of the sovereignty require all member species to suppress individualistic tendencies that might disrupt social cohesion. Apparently we're too unpredictable. The room erupted in arguments. Kira let them rage for precisely 30 seconds before slamming her hand on the table. The sharp crack silenced the chamber. Enough. We have 7 days to prepare a defense that could determine whether humanity survives as a free species or becomes a glorified nature preserve. She straightened her jacket. I'll need a team. Legal experts, cultural historians, scientists, and someone who can speak to who we really are. Chancellor Reeves nodded slowly. You'll have whatever you need. But Kira, what if we can't win? She thought of her daughter, safely at university in Lagos, studying xenobiology with dreams of exploring the stars. She thought of the billions who looked up at the night sky and saw possibility, not prison bars. Then we make them understand that caging humanity will cost them more than they can imagine. 6 days later, Kira stood in the launch bay alongside her assembled team. Dr. Marcus Chin, humanity's foremost expert on sovereignty law. Professor Ama Osei, cultural anthropologist. Captain Ryder Blackwood, decorated military officer who'd commanded Earth's defense during the first contact incident. And, surprisingly, a civilian, Zara Malik, a street artist from Cairo whose guerrilla murals had become symbols of human resilience. Why her? Ryder had questioned when Kira announced the selection. Because if we're being judged for being human, Kira replied, we need someone who embodies that without apology. The shuttle launched at dawn, breaking through Earth's atmosphere toward the massive vessel that hung in lunar orbit like a suspended cathedral. The Eternal Verdict was 3 kilometers of gleaming silver and dark alloys, its architecture designed to intimidate. Running lights pulsed in mathematical sequences that made Kira's eyes hurt. As they approached, David's voice crackled over the comm, Ambassador, I've been analyzing the Council's composition. 12 species, all uplifted and assimilated over the past 8 centuries. Not one of them successfully challenged the sovereignty during their integration trials. First time for everything, Zara muttered, sketching nervous patterns in her notebook. Marcus looked up from his data pad, face pale. There's something else. I found a reference in the historical records, a 13th species. The Kewandari. They went to trial 400 years ago and there's no record of them after that. Just a footnote about necessary measures. The shuttle bay doors of the Eternal Verdict yawned open before them, a mouth of darkness waiting to swallow Earth's last hope. Kira took a deep breath. Remember why we're here. We're not just defending humanity's right to exist. We're defending our right to exist as ourselves, messy, chaotic, beautiful, and free. The shuttle descended into shadow and the trial began. The Court of Stars. The tribunal chamber was designed to dwarf human psychology. Vaulted ceilings stretched 30 meters overhead, carved from a single piece of crystalline material that shifted colors with the ambient gravity waves. 12 elevated platforms circled the chamber's perimeter, each occupied by a representative of the Galactic Sovereignty's member species. Kira and her team stood on a central platform barely 3 meters across, a spotlight stage in an arena of judgment. The chief arbiter, a being called Overseer Talvenair of the Shi'ar Collective, loomed on the highest platform. Its body was composed of geometric plates that constantly reconfigured, creating the unsettling impression of watching a living puzzle solve itself. When it spoke, the voice emerged from everywhere and nowhere. The species Homo sapiens stands accused. Let the formal charges be recorded for universal witness. A holographic display erupted around them, showing Earth from space. But this wasn't a simple planetary image, it was overlaid with angry red markers, thousands of them, each pulsing like an infected wound. Count 1, Talvenair intoned. Unauthorized development and deployment of nuclear fission weaponry prior to first contact, a direct violation of the Technology Progression Accords. Images flashed: Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Mushroom clouds from decades of testing. Marcus stood, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. Earth developed nuclear technology independently before any knowledge of the Accords. We can't be held accountable for laws we didn't know existed. A chittering laugh echoed from one of the platforms. Ambassador Vex Cree of the Chitauri swarm, an insectoid creature with too many eyes, leaned forward. Ignorance is not innocence, human. The Accords exist because such weapons tear at the fabric of dimensional stability. Your species' recklessness endangered neighboring star systems you didn't even know existed. Count 2, Talvenair continued. Excessive cultural fragmentation. Your species maintains over 6,000 distinct languages, 12 major religious systems, and 193 competing governmental structures. This represents a catastrophic failure of social cohesion. Ama Osei stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of academic authority. Diversity is not fragmentation. Our varied cultures have driven innovation, art, philosophy. It drives chaos, interrupted Magistrate Korvax of the Zentari hegemony, a reptilian being whose scales reflected the chamber's shifting lights. Unified species prosper. Divided species become liabilities. We have mathematical models proving this correlation across 17 civilizations. Zara whispered to Kira, "They're not even listening. This isn't a trial, it's a formality before a predetermined sentence." Kira squeezed her hand, a silent command to wait. Count 3, Talvenair announced, and the holographic display changed to show footage of spacecraft. Human spacecraft. Unauthorized extrasolar exploration attempts. Your primitive vessels crossed the prohibited development threshold without clearance, triggering first contact protocols prematurely. Captain Blackwood couldn't contain himself. We were exploring our own star system. The Voyager probes, the Mars missions. These were acts of scientific curiosity, not aggression. Intent is irrelevant, Vex Cree buzzed. Your Voyager craft carried messages meant for alien life, a clear attempt to circumvent the contact hierarchy. You sought the stars before you were ready. And Count 4, Talvenair's voice dropped lower, heavy with something that might have been genuine concern. The most severe charge, evidence of mimetic contamination potential. Your species possesses an unprecedented capacity for what you call hope, a psychological pattern that resists assimilation and threatens to destabilize existing social frameworks. For a moment, the chamber fell silent. David's voice came through Kira's earpiece transmitted from the shuttle. I'm reading elevated stress patterns from at least 4 council members. That last charge. I think they're actually afraid. Marcus stood slowly. You're putting humanity on trial for hoping? For believing in better futures. A new voice entered the chamber, feminine, melodic, but carrying undertones of synthetic modulation. Archon Linus of the Veil Ascendancy materialized on her platform, her translucent form suggesting something between energy and matter. Dr. Chin, your species has a saying, hope is the thing with feathers. Your poet Emily Dickinson. But hope is not gentle. It is a virus that spreads through culture, making beings question their place, their purpose, their chains. Linus's form flickered. We have worked for 8 centuries to build a perfect society. Order. Harmony. Predictability. And then you arrive, with your music and your dreams and your stubborn refusal to accept limitations. Kira finally spoke, her voice clear and unwavering. You're not afraid we'll destroy your civilization. You're afraid we'll free it. The chamber erupted in chaos. 3 council members demanded immediate order. 2 others fell conspicuously silent. And Overseer Talvenair's geometric form spun rapidly, a sign David identified as extreme agitation. "This tribunal stands in recess," Talvenair declared. "Deliberations will resume in 6 orbital cycles. The human delegation will remain aboard under guard." As enforcement drones descended to escort them to quarters, Zara looked at Kira with wide eyes. "I think you just made it worse." Kira smiled grimly. "No. I just made it interesting." The weight of evidence. The detention quarters were a strange mercy, comfortable by human standards, but subtly wrong in every dimension. Chairs that almost supported human spines. Lighting that flickered just below conscious perception. Temperature that never quite settled. "Sensory destabilization," Marcus explained, running his hand along a wall that felt simultaneously smooth and textured. "Sovereignty standard for holding potentially dangerous entities. It keeps you off balance, prevents strategic thinking." "Well, it's working," Ryder muttered, pacing the perimeter for the 100th time. "I feel like I'm standing on a ship in a storm." Zara sat cross-legged on the floor, the only position that felt stable. She pulled out her sketchbook and was drawing rapid portraits of the council members, trying to capture something beneath their alien features. "That Archon Linus," she said without looking up. When she talked about hope being a virus, she sounded almost nostalgic. Kira stood at the chamber's single window, watching Earth rotate below them. From this distance it looked so peaceful. No borders visible, no indication of the beautiful mess of humanity churning on its surface. David's voice crackled through the communication panel. He'd been allowed to remain on the shuttle to provide technical support. "Ambassador, I found something. The Veil Ascendancy, Archon Linus's species. Before they joined the Sovereignty, their culture was renowned for artistic achievement. Music, visual arts, poetry. Their language had 17 different words for types of creative inspiration." "Had?" Amma asked, moving closer to the panel. "Their modern language has been standardized. Those words were deemed redundant, removed during what the records call cultural optimization. That was 600 years ago. The current Veil population shows 98% conformity to Sovereignty behavioral standards." Marcus pulled up his data pad, fingers flying across the holographic interface. "That tracks with what I'm seeing in the others. Every species on that council underwent similar optimization within 2 generations of joining. Languages simplified, cultural practices standardized, and here's the disturbing part: neurological structures gradually modified through genetic therapy programs. They're not just governing these species," Kira said quietly. "They're reshaping them. And they want to do the same to us," Ryder finished. The door chimed, a harsh, discordant sound, and slid open. 2 enforcement drones flanked the unexpected visitor. Archon Linus herself, her translucent form dimming to a less overwhelming luminosity. "I come without council approval," she said without preamble. "I have 14 minutes before my absence triggers security protocols." Kira stepped forward cautiously. "Why?" Linus's form rippled, suggesting something like a sigh. "Because I am old enough to remember what we were. I am one of the last Veil born before the Ascension, before we were elevated into the Sovereignty's embrace." Her voice carried a weight of centuries. "I remember creating songs that made my people weep with joy. I remember debates that lasted days because ideas mattered more than efficiency. I remember messiness and passion and the beautiful chaos of being truly alive." She gestured, and a holographic image appeared. A veil from long ago, her energy form wild and irregular, radiating colors that defied human spectrum. "This was my grandmother. A composer. Her final symphony was deemed unnecessarily complex and removed from cultural archives during optimization." Zara stood slowly, sketchbook clutched to her chest. "They erased your art." "They erased our souls," Linus corrected. "Gently. Gradually. With kindness and efficiency and the promise of peace. And we let them because we were tired of conflict and chaos. We thought uniformity would bring harmony." Her form brightened with what might have been anger. "Instead, it brought a silence so profound that most of my people no longer remember we once sang." "Why are you telling us this?" Marcus asked. "Because Talvenair is correct. Your hope is dangerous. But not in the way the Council fears. Your species is the first to reach this stage of contact with your chaos intact. Your art, your conflicts, your thousands of different ways of being human, you're still whole." Linus moved closer to the window, her reflection merging with Earth's image. "If the Council rules against you, they will offer a choice: accept guidance, and join as junior members or face quarantine. Most species accept. The alternative seems too cruel. But it's not really a choice, Amma said. No. It's a slow death dressed as evolution. Kira felt the pieces clicking together. The Kewandari, the species that vanished from records. They refused, didn't they? Linus dimmed further, a gesture of mourning. They chose freedom. The sovereignty chose to make an example. Their world still exists, but their civilization was reset. They now exist as pre-industrial tribes, their history erased, their technology destroyed. The council calls it necessary conservation. That's genocide, Ryder breathed. That's order, Linus countered bitterly. Perfect, terrible order. She turned to leave, then paused at the threshold. Tomorrow they will present their final evidence. Talvenair has commissioned something special. A simulation showing Earth's projected future without sovereignty intervention. They will show you destroying yourselves, and they will be very convincing. Because they've seen it before? Kira asked. Because they've caused it before. Every time a species refuses, the outcome becomes evidence for the next trial. Linus's form flickered. I cannot help you further. But know this, if you find a way to win, you won't just save humanity. You'll give others the courage to remember what they've forgotten. The door slid closed, leaving the team in heavy silence. Zara finally spoke. So no pressure then. Despite everything, Kira laughed, a sharp, defiant sound in the artificial quiet. Marcus, can you access the sovereignty's historical archives? If they've been doing this for centuries, there must be patterns, weaknesses. I can try, but... Do it. Amma, I need you to compile everything that makes human culture resilient. Not just the beautiful parts, the ugly, stubborn, refusing to die parts. Ryder, analyze the Kewandari incident. If they tried to fight, I want to know how and where they failed. She turned to Zara. And you keep drawing. I have an idea, but I need to think like an artist, not a diplomat. What idea? Ryder asked. Kira smiled, and it wasn't a gentle expression. They want to show us a future where humanity destroys itself. Tomorrow we're going to show them why that future will never happen. Not because we're perfect, but because we're perfectly, impossibly human. Outside the window, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its fate hung in the balance of a trial conducted in the silence between stars. Projections of doom. The tribunal chamber had transformed overnight. The crystalline walls now displayed a panoramic view of Earth, so detailed Kira could make out individual cities, weather patterns, the delicate spiderweb of lights marking human civilization in the darkness. Overseer Talvenair's geometric form pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. We resume with the presentation of predictive evidence. The Council has commissioned the sovereignty's most advanced analytical systems to project humanity's future along its current trajectory. Marcus leaned close to Kira. This is bad. Their quantum modeling systems can predict societal collapse with 97% accuracy. I've seen the documentation. Accuracy based on species that let themselves be measured and managed, Kira whispered back. We're not them. Silence in the chamber, Talvenair commanded. Begin projection. The Earth image flickered, and a new holographic display erupted around them. Not static images, but a fully rendered simulation of humanity's future. A date appeared, 2075, 50 years forward. The Earth below was burning. Not literally, though there were fires. But the simulation showed a planet ravaged by climate catastrophe, drowned coastlines, expanding deserts, storms of unprecedented fury. The human population counter dropped from 8 billion to 3 billion in seconds of simulated time. Ecological collapse, announced Vexcree, the insectoid ambassador. Your species' industrial activity reaches critical breakdown within 5 decades. This is not speculation. This is mathematical certainty based on current resource consumption patterns. But the simulation wasn't finished. It zoomed in on remaining population centers, showing something worse than environmental disaster. Humanity turning on itself. Wars over water, over habitable land, over resources. Nuclear weapons launched in desperation. The technological progress that might have saved them turned instead into tools of extinction. Zara looked away, but Kira forced herself to watch. This was the sovereignty's strongest weapon, not force but fear. The date advanced, 2150. The population counter showed hundreds of millions, scattered in isolated pockets. The simulation displayed a world of warlords and tribal conflicts. Technology regressed to pre-industrial levels, knowledge lost, culture fragmented beyond recognition. This is your freedom, Magistrate Korvac said, his reptilian features arranged in something like pity. This is what happens when a species refuses guidance. You will devour yourselves as every chaotic civilization eventually does. The simulation jumped forward again, 2500. The Earth was silent. Small human populations existed in scattered settlements, but the great cities were ruins, the satellites were debris, the sum total of human achievement reduced to archaeological curiosity. The Kewandari pattern, Talvenaer intoned. Defiance followed by inevitable collapse. We offer you the chance to avoid this fate. The simulation froze, leaving the image of a dead civilization suspended in the air. Ryder's jaw clenched. It's a lie. They can't know. Actually, Marcus interrupted quietly, they probably can. Quantum prediction modeling this sophisticated is essentially deterministic for closed systems. He looked at Kira. The math doesn't lie. No, Kira agreed, standing. But it makes assumptions. She walked to the center of the platform directly beneath the frozen apocalypse. Overseer Talvenaer, I have questions about this projection. The simulation is not open for debate. It is scientific fact. Then it can withstand scientific inquiry. Kira gestured to the environmental collapse section. Your model assumes humanity continues current consumption patterns without adaptation. But human history is defined by adaptation. We've survived ice ages, plagues, famines, each time by changing our behavior. Temporary adaptations followed by relapse, Vexcree countered. The pattern is clear. Is it? Amma stepped forward, her academic training evident in her precise tone. Your model shows cultural fragmentation leading to conflict. But you're measuring fragmentation by sovereignty standards, linguistic diversity, religious variation, governmental systems. Those aren't weaknesses. They're our immune system against monoculture collapse. Archon Linus remained silent on her platform, but her form brightened slightly, a signal, perhaps. Marcus pulled up counterdata on his pad. I've analyzed the projection's conflict scenarios. They assume resource competition follows a zero-sum game theoretical model. But humans have repeatedly demonstrated non-zero-sum solutions. The Green Revolution, the Montreal Protocol, the Global Vaccine Initiative, all examples of worldwide cooperation when stakes were high enough. Past success doesn't guarantee future outcomes, Korvax argued. Neither does past failure, Kira shot back. You're showing us one possible future and calling it inevitable. But your simulation is missing a critical variable. Which is? Talvenaer asked. Kira took a breath. Hope backed by action. You model us as we are, extrapolate our problems and predict collapse. But you can't model what we choose to become. You can't quantify the moment a species looks at destruction and says, not today. She turned to face the council directly. Show me the Kewandari simulation. The one you showed them before you erased their civilization. Silence fell across the chamber. Several council members' stress patterns spiked on David's monitoring systems. That is classified, Talvenaer began. What? Because it didn't come true? Kira pressed. Because they didn't destroy themselves? You destroyed them to prove your point? The Kewandari situation was complex, Vexcree said carefully. Complex how? Ryder demanded. Did they fail or did you make them fail? Zara suddenly stood, her voice cutting through the tension. I've been sketching while you talked. Every one of you council members. Want to know what I see? She held up her notebook, showing portraits that captured something beyond physical features. Fear. Every single one of you is afraid. Not of us destroying ourselves, of us proving you wrong. The artist speaks wisdom, came a new voice, rough, gravelly, the first words spoken by Ambassador Dravik of the Thrawn Unity, a bear-like creature who'd remained silent until now. I, too, remember the promises made to my people. Unity through conformity. Strength through standardization. We accepted and we survived. But did we live? Talvenaer's form spun rapidly. Ambassador Dravik, you exceed your... I exceed nothing but patience with hypocrisy, Dravik growled. We show them predictions of doom to justify our intervention. But perhaps we intervene to guarantee the doom we predict. Closed-loop logic. Self-fulfilling prophecy. The chamber erupted in arguments among the council members themselves, the first crack in their unified front. Kira caught Marcus's eye. He nodded slightly. This was the opening they needed. Overseer Talvenaer, Kira called out, her voice carrying over the chaos. I request the right of alternative projection. If you can show us one possible future, let us show you another. That is not standard protocol. Neither is putting an entire species on trial for being themselves, Kira countered. You've shown your evidence. We deserve the chance to present ours. Talvenair's form slowed its rotation, geometric plates clicking into a new configuration. You wish to present a counter-simulation? Impossible. You lack the quantum computing capacity. We don't need quantum computers, Zara said, understanding Kira's plan. We need something your models can't account for, human stubbornness. Kira smiled. We request a recess to prepare our presentation. 48 hours. Denied. You have 24. Done. As the chamber emptied and drones escorted them back to quarters, Ryder pulled Kira aside. Please tell me you have more than inspirational speeches planned. I have something better, Kira said. I have a call to make to Earth. And I have an artist, an anthropologist, a soldier, and a lawyer. That's more than enough to start a revolution. Or lose a trial, Marcus muttered. Same thing, Kira replied, depending on who's keeping score. Voices from Earth. The communication chamber was small, its walls lined with quantum relays that could transmit messages across the void between the eternal verdict and Earth. Kira stood before the main console, her team gathered behind her, while David patched through the most important call of her life. Connection established, David's voice confirmed. Broadcasting to every communication device on Earth. You're live in 3, 2. The screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing thousands of faces, hastily assembled crowds in Times Square, Trafalgar Square, Tokyo's Shibuya Crossing, Lagos, Mumbai, Sao Paulo. Millions of humans looking up at public displays, everyone suddenly connected to this single moment. Kira had expected to feel terrified. Instead she felt oddly calm. Hello Earth. My name is Ambassador Kira Vashin and I need your help. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Right now our species is on trial. The galactic sovereignty has presented evidence that we're too chaotic, too individualistic, too hopeful to be allowed to govern ourselves. They've shown us a simulation of our future, one where we destroy ourselves through war, environmental collapse, and our own worst impulses. On the screens she could see the reactions: anger, fear, confusion. They're not entirely wrong. We have those impulses. We've made terrible mistakes. But here's what they can't understand. We also have the capacity to choose differently. And I need you to prove it. Amma stepped forward, her voice joining the broadcast. We need evidence of humanity's resilience. Not our achievements, they can measure those. We need the moments that can't be quantified. The times you chose compassion over profit, community over comfort, tomorrow over today. Stories, Zara added. Real ones. The grandmother who planted trees she'd never see grow. The teenager who stopped a suicide. The community that rebuilt after disaster. The scientist who shared a discovery instead of patenting it. Send us everything that shows who we really are. Marcus pulled up a data collection interface. We've created an open submission portal. You have 22 hours. Upload videos, written accounts, anything that demonstrates human cooperation, sacrifice, or choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. They want to define us by our worst moments, Kira continued. Let's show them our best ones. Not because we're perfect, we're not. But because we're trying. Because we refuse to give up. Because even when we fall, we get back up. Ryder's military bearing softened as he spoke. I've seen combat. I've seen humans at their worst, but I've also seen medics run into fire to save enemies, soldiers share rations with civilians, warriors choose peace even when war was easier. Send us those stories. The ones that prove we're worth saving. The screens showed people pulling out phones, typing on keyboards, recording messages. The movement was spreading in real time. Then, unexpectedly, a message request came through on the official channel. David checked the source code. Ambassador, it's Chancellor Reeves. And he's not alone. I'm reading signature confirmations from heads of state worldwide. Kira accepted the connection. Matteo Reeves appeared on screen, but behind him stood an unprecedented gathering, leaders from every major nation, setting aside political differences for perhaps the first time in human history. Ambassador Vashin, Reeves said formally, we have an announcement. In the past 6 hours, the Unified Council has passed the most comprehensive legislative package in human history. Universal baseline agreements on carbon reduction, nuclear disarmament verification, shared technology development, and cooperative resource management. Prime Minister Anika Joshi of the Indian Federation stepped forward. We're not doing this because you asked. We're doing it because they challenged us. They said we'd destroy ourselves. We're proving them wrong. President Kwame Nkrumah of the African Union nodded. The simulation showed us fighting over water. So we've just ratified the Global Water Commons Treaty. No more resource wars. Period. On and on it went. Leaders from nations that had been adversaries for generations, standing together, announcing cooperation agreements that would have seemed impossible days ago. They wanted to predict our future, Reeves concluded. We're making them liars in real time. After the call ended, the team stood in stunned silence. Then the submission portal began chiming. Once, twice, then in a constant stream of notifications. Stories flooded in. A doctor in Syria who'd treated patients from all sides of a conflict. A Japanese tsunami survivor who'd spent years rebuilding others' homes before her own. The international research team that had shared vaccine data freely during a pandemic. Firefighters forming human chains. Strangers becoming family. Enemies choosing reconciliation. It's not stopping, David reported from the shuttle. The portal's receiving thousands of submissions per minute. Millions per hour. People are translating stories into hundreds of languages, cross-posting, amplifying each other's voices. Zara scrolled through the entries, tears streaming down her face. Listen to this one. My name is Chen Wei. When the earthquake destroyed my village, I lost everything. But a relief worker from a country my government called our enemy gave me her own food. Years later, I became a relief worker. I've helped thousands. That's humanity. We save each other. Marcus was analyzing the data patterns. This is extraordinary. We're seeing cooperation metrics that exceed any civilization in the sovereignty's records. And it's all happening voluntarily, organically. Because they told us we couldn't, Ryder said quietly. Humanity's greatest talent, proving people wrong out of sheer spite. Kira watched the stories continue to pour in, each one a small defiance, a tiny revolution. We're not just defending ourselves anymore. We're showing them what they've forgotten, that chaos and order aren't opposites. They're partners. And the species that learn to dance between them don't just survive. They thrive. A notification appeared on the main screen. Tribunal session resuming in 6 hours. Present your alternative projection. We're not ready, Marcus said. We need more time to organize this data to create a coherent. No, Kira interrupted. We don't need organization. We need truth. Raw, messy, beautiful truth. She turned to her team. Amma, can you categorize these stories by theme? Marcus, I need you to map them to specific points in the sovereignty's doom projection. Show where human choice diverged from their predictions. Zara, I need visual representation. Nothing polished. Something honest. And you? Ryder asked. I'm going to write a speech that either saves our species or ends my career. She smiled grimly. Possibly both. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Kira sat before the compiled stories, reading through accounts of humanity at its finest. Not perfect. Not sanitized. Just real people making real choices to be better than their worst impulses. Outside the viewport, Earth rotated peacefully, unaware that millions of its children had just unified in the face of cosmic judgment. In 6 hours they'd present their case. In 6 hours they'd find out if hope was enough. The human defense, 800 words. The tribunal chamber filled with an expectant silence as Kira and her team took the central platform. Overseer Talvenair's geometric form pulsed steadily, while the 12 council members arranged themselves on their elevated positions like judges at humanity's final hour. You have requested the right to present an alternative projection, Talvenair stated. Proceed. Kira stepped forward, no notes in hand, no script prepared. Behind her, a simple holographic display activated, not the sophisticated quantum simulation the sovereignty had used, but something far more powerful, human faces. Overseer, council members, you showed us a future where humanity destroys itself. Your simulation was mathematically precise, quantum verified, backed by 8 centuries of data on species development. She paused. And it was completely wrong. Vexcree chittered in annoyance. You cannot dismiss. I'm not dismissing your math. I'm saying it's incomplete. You modeled resources, population, conflict patterns. But you forgot to model the one thing that makes humans different. We change our minds. The holographic display shifted, showing the stories that had flooded in from Earth. Not edited, not sanitized, raw submissions from millions of people. This is Mariam al-Rashid, Kira said as a woman's face appeared. Damascus, Syria. Your simulation predicted resource wars. Mariam spent 12 years in conflict zones teaching enemy soldiers' children to read. Both sides. Simultaneously. She didn't do it for peace treaties or political gain. She did it because she believed those children deserved better than their parents' wars. Another face. Kenji Tanaka. Fukushima, Japan. After the nuclear disaster, he could have left. Instead, he stayed to care for abandoned animals in the exclusion zone. 15 years, knowing the radiation would probably kill him. He's still there. Lakshmi Venkatesh. Chennai, India. Climate scientist who discovered her own research was being used to justify corporate pollution. She quit, leaked the data, destroyed her career to tell the truth. She now works at a public school teaching kids about environmental science. Story after story, face after face. The holographic display became a river of humanity, imperfect, stubborn, impossibly hopeful. Amma stepped forward. Your simulation assumes humans will default to tribalism under pressure. You're right that we have tribes. But you're wrong about what defines them. We don't just tribe by genetics or geography. We tribe by values, by shared purpose, by crazy ideas like, maybe we can do better. She pulled up data showing the global legislative actions from the past 24 hours. In response to your trial, our species, which you claim is too fragmented to govern, passed more unified environmental and peace protocols than in our entire previous history. Not because we had to. Because you dared us not to. Marcus took over, his legal mind cutting through the emotion with precision. Let's address your model's fundamental flaw. You assume behavioral patterns are fixed. But humans are uniquely plastic. We're the only species that can look at our own worst impulses and say, no, actually, we're going to be different. He displayed comparative data. Every species you've uplifted showed decreasing innovation post-integration. Music becomes standardized. Art becomes uniform. New discoveries drop by 80% within 3 generations. You call it optimization. It's actually extinction of possibility. Ryder moved to the display controls, his military bearing commanding attention. Your simulation showed US nuclear war. Here's what you missed. Humans created weapons powerful enough to end our world 7 times over. We've had them for 80 years. And in 80 years of conflicts, border disputes, territorial wars, and political tensions, we've never used them again. Not once. He pulled up images of nuclear arsenals being decommissioned, treaties being signed, weapons being dismantled. We built the tools for our own apocalypse and then we chose, actively, deliberately chose, not to use them. That's not in your model. You can't quantify the decision not to do something terrible when you could. Zara was the last to speak. She'd been drawing throughout the presentation, and now she activated her final piece, a massive artistic visualization of the submissions they'd received. You asked what makes humans dangerous. This is it. The visualization bloomed outward, millions of individual acts of kindness, courage, and defiance woven into a tapestry that filled the chamber. We're dangerous because we're unpredictable. Because a human can wake up tomorrow and decide to be better than they were today. You can't simulate that. You can't model it. You can't control it. The chamber fell silent. Kira noticed something extraordinary. Archon Linus was openly weeping, or whatever the veil equivalent was, her form fluctuating with visible emotion. Ambassador Dravik stood on his platform, massive paws gripping the railing. But Overseer Tal Venair's response was measured, almost gentle. Ambassador Vashin, you misunderstand our purpose. We don't deny humanity's capacity for good. We've observed it extensively. That's precisely why we're here. The words landed like stones. Your species possesses extraordinary potential, Tal Venair continued. Creativity that exceeds the veil at their peak. Resilience beyond the Therion. Cooperation instincts rivaling the Shi'ar collective. You are, in many ways, the best of what we've encountered. Then why put us on trial? Kira demanded. Because potential and sustainability are different things. Your grandmother who plants trees, your teacher in war zones, your scientist who sacrifices career for truth, they are exceptional. But they are not typical. For every Miriam, how many others choose violence? For every Kenji, how many choose profit over planet? Magistrate Korvax leaned forward. Your submission data is compelling. Millions of stories of human goodness. But your global population is 8 billion. Millions are statistical noise. No, Kira said firmly. Millions are proof of concept. Every one of those stories started with a single choice. One person deciding that the predicted future wasn't inevitable. She walked to the center of the platform, directly addressing Tal Venair. You're right that we're not all heroes. We're messy and contradictory and sometimes we fail spectacularly. But here's what you're missing. We know that about ourselves. We look in the mirror, see the monster we could become, and most of us, not all but most, choose differently. Self-awareness doesn't guarantee survival, Vexcree argued. No, Amma agreed. But it gives us a fighting chance. Which is more than you're offering. You want to optimize us, standardize us, make us predictable. You want to remove the chaos that makes us human. But that chaos is our strength. It's where our art comes from, our innovation, our ability to surprise even ourselves. Zara held up her final sketch, a portrait of Earth, not pristine and perfect but alive with complexity. You've been building a museum of civilizations. Perfect, preserved, dead. We're offering you something different, a partnership with a species that's still growing, still changing, still becoming. Talvenair's form stopped spinning entirely, a gesture of deep consideration. You speak of partnership. But partnerships require trust. How can we trust a species that might destroy itself? How can we trust a civilization that destroys species to save them? Kira countered. The Kewandari didn't fail. You erased them when they refused to surrender their identity. You're not preventing apocalypse. You're causing it, slowly, gently, with kindness and efficiency. The chamber erupted. Half the council members demanded order. The other half sat in stunned silence. Enough. Talvenair's voice resonated through the crystalline walls. This tribunal will now enter final deliberations. The human delegation will await our verdict. As they were escorted out, Kira caught Archon Linus's eye. The veil made a subtle gesture, hope perhaps or farewell. In the corridor, Ryder voiced what they were all thinking. Did we just win or lose? Both, Marcus said quietly. We proved we're worth saving. Now we find out if that's enough to make them let us save ourselves. Kira looked back at the chamber doors sealing shut. Whatever happens, we told the truth. That's all we could do. Think they'll listen? Zara asked. I think, Kira said slowly, we gave them permission to remember who they used to be. Now we see if they have the courage to use it. Verdict: a new dawn. The waiting was designed to break them. 48 hours confined to quarters while the council deliberated. No updates. No information. Just the endless recycled air and the weight of 8 billion lives hanging in the balance. Kira couldn't sleep. She stood at the viewport, watching Earth rotate below, trying to memorize every detail in case this was the last time she'd see it free. You know what's funny? Zara appeared beside her, sketchbook clutched to her chest. I grew up poor in Cairo. Spent half my childhood angry at how unfair everything was. Then I got older and realized, humanity's mess is part of its beauty. We're a work in progress. Always have been. Think they understand that? Kira asked. I think some of them do. Linus, maybe Dravik. The others? Zara shrugged. They forgot what it's like to be unfinished. The door chimed. A drone hovered in the entrance. The council has reached a verdict. You will present yourselves immediately. The tribunal chamber had changed. The holographic displays were gone, replaced by simple crystalline surfaces that reflected their own nervous faces back at them. The council members sat in absolute silence, their stress patterns unreadable. Overseer Talvenair's geometric form had reconfigured into something that might have been solemn. After extensive deliberation, this council has reached a decision regarding the species Homo sapiens. Kira felt Marcus grab her hand. On her other side, Amma's breathing had gone shallow. The charges brought against humanity are unprecedented in their complexity. You are simultaneously our greatest hope and our deepest fear. A species that could either transcend the limitations that have bound every civilization we've encountered, or spectacularly validate every concern that led to the sovereignty's formation. Talvenair paused, and for the first time, Kira detected something like uncertainty in its voice. The vote was not unanimous. In 8 centuries of tribunal history, this is the first time a council has deadlocked. 6 members voted for immediate integration under standard protocols. 6 voted for something else entirely. A murmur ran through the chamber. Deadlock meant what? Kira's legal training offered no precedent. In cases of deadlock, Talvenair continued, the chief arbiter holds deciding authority. I have considered all evidence, reviewed all arguments, and consulted records dating back to the sovereignty's founding. The geometric form pulsed slowly. I have come to a troubling conclusion. We have become what we feared most. We set out to preserve civilization. We have created a mausoleum. The chamber exploded in protests. Vexcree's chittering rose to a shriek. Magistrate Korvax slammed his scaled fists on the platform. But Talvenair continued, voice cutting through the chaos. Humanity's defense did more than prove their worth. It revealed our failures. We have spent 8 centuries eliminating risk, and in doing so, we eliminated growth. We optimize species into extinction of purpose. Archon Linus stood, her form blazing with sudden intensity. Chief Arbiter, are you suggesting? I am suggesting that the sovereignty requires fundamental restructuring. But that is a matter for later deliberation. Talvenair turned its attention fully to Kira and her team. My verdict regarding humanity is as follows. The charges are hereby complicated. That's not a legal ruling, Marcus whispered. You are found neither guilty nor innocent, because the framework of judgment itself is flawed. Therefore, I propose an alternative. Humanity will be granted full autonomous status, not as junior members but as equal partners. You will retain complete sovereignty over your development, culture, and future choices. Kira felt her knees weaken. We're free. With conditions, Vexcree interjected bitterly. There must be conditions. One condition, Talvenair agreed. You will accept a permanent observer, someone who will learn from you as much as you learn from us. Someone who remembers what we've forgotten. Archon Linus descended from her platform, her form settling into a more stable configuration. I volunteer. If the Council permits, I wish to return to Earth with the human delegation. To study, to learn, to remember what civilization means when it's still alive. The vote was swift. 8 Council members approved, even some who'd voted against humanity. The message was clear. Some of them wanted to remember too. 3 weeks later, Kira stood in the UN Assembly Hall in New Geneva. Archon Linus stood beside her, the veil's translucent form dimmed to a gentle glow that didn't overwhelm the human delegates. The sovereignty has offered us technology, Kira told the assembled nations. Faster-than-light travel, quantum computing, medical advances beyond our current imagination. We can accept it or we can develop our own versions at our own pace. What did you recommend? Asked Chancellor Reeves. Kira smiled. I recommended we do both. Take their knowledge but filter it through our own chaotic, messy process. Let 1,000 different human approaches bloom. Some will fail. Some will succeed beyond anything they imagined. That's who we are. Linus spoke, her voice carrying harmonics of emotion the sovereignty had spent centuries breeding out. I have spent 21 days among humans. I have witnessed arguments that resolved in understanding, conflicts that ended in compromise, and failures that became foundations for success. I have heard music that made me remember songs my grandmother sang. I have seen art that reminded me why my people once created beauty. She turned to address the assembly directly. The sovereignty will watch your development. But I believe, and I have submitted this in my official reports, that in a few generations, it will not be us teaching you. It will be you teaching the galaxy what we have forgotten, that life without growth is not life at all. It is merely elaborate death. 6 months later, Marcus compiled the final report on the trial's impact. 40% of sovereignty member species had requested cultural consultation with human advisors. 3 species had formally challenged their own integration agreements. The Veil had begun an unprecedented cultural renaissance, with Linus leading a movement to restore banned artistic practices. We didn't just win our trial, he told Kira over coffee in her New Geneva office. We put the entire sovereignty on trial. Good, Kira said, watching through her window as a Veil art exhibition opened in the plaza below, the first such event in 600 years. They needed it. Her calm chimed. David's voice, Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the Therion Unity. Ambassador Dravik is requesting a cultural exchange program. He wants to send historians to study human resilience practices. Approved. Send him our recommendations. After the call ended, Kira turned to the window. In the plaza, humans and Veil mingled freely, examining artwork that pushed boundaries, sparked conversation, dared to be imperfect. Zara appeared in the doorway, paint-stained and grinning. You need to see the mural we just finished on the embassy building. Linus helped design it. It's not subtle. Show me. The mural covered 3 stories, a chrysalis breaking open, butterflies emerging, each one different, chaotic, beautiful. At the bottom, a single line of text in Veil script in English. We were optimized into perfection. They remain messy enough to grow. Learn from chaos. Embrace the unfinished. This is how civilizations truly live. Kira touched the wall gently, feeling the texture of dried paint. We did it. We actually changed their minds. No, Linus corrected, materializing beside them. You changed their hearts. Minds are easy. Hearts require courage. Her form flickered with something that might have been joy. My people are remembering how to feel. Other species are questioning their constraints. You have started something that will ripple through the sovereignty for centuries. Revolution. Zara suggested. Evolution, Linus replied. The best kind. Messy, unpredictable, human. In orbit above Earth, the eternal verdict still hung against the stars, no longer a threat, but a reminder. Humanity had been judged and found complicated, imperfect, chaotic, perfectly, impossibly human. And in being themselves, they had given the galaxy permission to be alive again.